Hey, everybody. Apparently, in trying to upload our full-length episode to YouTube, YouTube has said, no, this video is too long. So we are going to upload it in two parts. So you're actually at the first part, and so you're probably in the right place. So no warnings. Anyway, just proceed, and welcome to the first part of the Ted Lasso Season 3 podcast.
Hi, you've reached the Signal Watch, movies, television, comics, and more. I'm your host, Ryan Steens. Join me and our cadre of co-contributors as we examine cultural artifacts of the 20th century, boldly explore the 21st, and try to put it all in perspective. Stay tuned. We're gonna try to make this work. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Signal Watch. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Steens, and with me today is...
Laura Maxwell Scott. I was waiting for Mrshl.
Ladies first, Laura. Ladies first. I have manners. And I'm Mrshl Preddy.
All Texans, if you're wondering where the manners are coming from.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, not from Kansas. We are talking Ted Lasso Season 3, the entire season, because this is not a Ted Lasso podcast where we go and break it down episode by episode. The third season completed a few weeks ago. We had some delays because of travel and a variety of other things. But also at this point, hopefully we are not spoiling anybody except for people who are weird enough to listen to a third season recap podcast, but have not finished the third season, in which case, why are you here? But
they're very niche.
Yeah, but we welcome you nonetheless. Everyone's welcome here, but you're going to get spoiled, as they say. So a lot has been said in all sorts of directions about the third season of Ted Lasso. Perhaps summing it up in just a few words, Laura, what were your general feelings and impressions of the third season?
I thought it was really brave that everyone was dead the whole time, and that turned out to be a giant dream sequence.
Coming right out of the gate. I thought we would work toward the dream sequence theory, but no. Coming right out of the gate, Laura.
I do feel strongly that parts of the end might be a dream sequence, although that has been officially debunked by writers. So officially that is not true, but in my own headcanon, that we'll get to that. But my overall theories are it got a little unruly this season. I got really worried at the episode right before they went to Amsterdam. Then I love the Amsterdam episode. I think they stuck the landing. I think on paper, there's a lot of things I loved about this season that I thought should have worked, that chemistry-wise maybe, or timing-wise just didn't work for me. But there are a lot of lovely things that came out of that I really appreciated. So I'm going to lean favorable in a world that I feel like is unfavorable towards the season, but I have some quibbles.
Fair enough. Mrshl, how about yourself?
I agree with Laura. I think unruly is a really good word for this season. I think they lost their showrunner for the first two seasons, and so our star Jason Sudeikis was the showrunner, and I thought that showed, in the seams of this show. I agree. I think this show stuck the landing, and that it has some core strengths that it's Ted Lasso. It's really hard to mess this up in a way that makes it not enjoyable for people, because whatever the flaws structurally with the season, you still just want to hang out with these people. You still want to root for them. You still want to watch them succeed. So yeah, I agree. I think it stuck the landing. There's some parts I have some quibbles with, more than quibbles. But overall, I really enjoyed it. I do think that it got a little too big, and somehow like it somehow got bigger and smaller at the same time. Like it felt like the first two seasons are really structured more like a sitcom, but the world feels a little like bigger, and like there's more implied outside, and somehow in showing more and sort of branching out and giving us all of these settings and new people to peek in on. I thought it actually felt smaller, and I just didn't feel like that. I wish they had reined it in a little more and let us focus on some of the core cast rather than. And we'll get into that, but so that's my. I'm going to sum up there.
When you say smaller, do you mean stretched more thin? Maybe that's where I feel like I'm like, we got more. I don't know, because the episodes were so much longer, but we got more story. But sometimes I was like, there's just not enough here. It's not connecting.
What I mean literally is, that we got all these crazy settings that we, it's like whereas the first season that felt almost like a tight office comedy, really you're going outside there. We've got multiple office comedies going on. Keely's got her office sort of space going on. They're traveling. Right. There's just a lot going on in a lot of different places. There's Sam's restaurant. There's just all of these sorts of things that are happening outside of the stadium, if you will. And yet that's not making the world feel bigger to me than it felt when you had like some of the standalone dream sort of standalone episodes from season 2. It sort of felt like, oh, this is weird. You did feel like you were in. I feel like in trying to sort of explore a lot of the possibilities of the world, they actually didn't make it feel any bigger, and in a way, it felt flatter to me because they were doing more, but it made it feel like less because it was stretched too thin. I got less of everything that I want out of this show, and I didn't get to spend time on some threads that maybe I thought, like, I would have loved to spend more time with Nate. I thought Nate had a really cool kind of thing that was possible there, but instead we only got flashes of that. And we only got flashes of Keely's office drama, and we only got flashes of our romance with the owner whose name is now for some reason escaping me. We only got Rebecca. So we only got we got her romance, but it's like they got a standalone episode, and then it just felt like a lot was hinted at, but a lot was unexplored. And so I just felt like I say, I thought it could have been a lot tighter. And I thought by sort of somehow, like by trying to make it bigger and sort of putting us in there, it wasn't allowing us to sort of expand that universe on our own, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does to me.
I think one of the things that I agree with every sentiment there. I can only, do a +1 on all of that. I think if on top of all of that, and I rewatched the first episode of the 3rd season yesterday, and they basically telegraph everything that's going to happen before the credits roll in that episode.
Will you remind us what happens right before?
Sure. It's you watch him put Henry on the plane,
right?
And then he goes to the office and talks about how, it was really hard letting Henry go, and talks to the doctor on the phone about, I sometimes wonder what I'm doing here. Is this the right place for me to be? I feel like I need to be with my son. And I know that was supposed to be setting up the conflict for the season, but I felt one of the biggest problems they had all season was not just, in addition to the fact that it was all stretched very thin, and they took the thing that they had done very well, I thought, in the 2 prior seasons, of not feeling like they had to show all the things that you can fill in yourself.
Right.
They stretched that too thin, but at the same time, everything felt incredibly telegraphed to me, from pretty much the first episode, of like, oh, so this ends with Ted going home. Like, that seemed like an obvious sort of thing, especially once they made it clear he wasn't going to stay with Sassy in any way, shape, or form. Anyway, that was kind of my initial kind of shot across the bow of my impression. And I'm going to get into this immediately, because I kind of want to clear the table with it, because it has very much colored my perception of the show. How aware are y'all of the basic Twitter internet chatter around Ted Lasso and the reactions to the show's finale?
Well, it depends on what you mean, because are we going to get into how this is kind of a transitional season? You know, are we going to get into the critical consensus of, you know, hey, this is the disappointment of the overall, I think, critical disappointment of Ted Lasso? Are we talking about the future? I mean, I've seen all of that in terms of Twitter discourse of Ted Lasso. I've seen a lot of it, so I'm not sure.
I guess in kind of the positive and the negative, less worried about the future. I think we'll definitely get into that, but I am curious as to what you're seeing online, maybe versus what I'm seeing online versus what Laura's seeing online. Just in because everyone walks away from the show with a very different impression, which is kind of fascinating to me. And people were watching it seemingly as completely different shows for the last 2 years, I would argue.
Well, I'm not really on Twitter anymore, since I might get back on, but I'm probably not as familiar with the Twitter discourse, but I am familiar that some people, I think this show from the very beginning has always played with red herrings and has always been sort of like, we're not going to necessarily, I think very early on, I was like, oh, is it going to be Ted and Rebecca? And then, you know, but this isn't that kind of show. And certainly they did the Sam and Rebecca, like, you know, there's going to be nods to Cheers. We can talk about that a little bit, but like, so there's certain things that they will play at and not fulfill. And I think certainly there are people out there who really thought that they were going to get together and felt really betrayed when they didn't, or when they did that red herring. I think there's some people that there's clearly a Wizard of Oz motif happening. Ted is from Kansas. They're from Kansas. Like, it's not very hard. It's part of, we were talking about this earlier, like the whole thing is like the hero's journey for Ted. It's not all about Ted, but obviously there's going to be a lot of like, you know, there's no place like home, stuff like that. But I have seen on TikTok and some other places things where people are like, really like, it is the Wizard of Oz. And it's like, well, you can make allusions to something without it being like, I don't know.
That's like a weird place to go. Now you're trying to identify the Tin Man and the Scarecrow, and
loosely it's there. Like loosely, you can look at like Roy and Nate and Beard at the end and be like, okay, well, they're your guys archetypally. Right. But like, I think some people get really in the weeds on that, and look, it can be fun to get in the weeds on that. So if you enjoy that, great. But that's not how I viewed the show. And then a lot of people just hate this season. So I'll just say that a lot of people are just some people love this season, and a lot of people are just like, this season's trash. That's what I'm seeing. Or like, it's all, you did it wrong. You did Ted Lasso wrong.
That's right. Yeah, there's a lot of that. And I mean, but I'm now open to the idea that this has been one long piece of propaganda for the gold standard. I'm okay with that if that's what we're aimed at. I mean, I now I'm sort of replaying the season in my head, and with that in mind, you sort of go, you know, Ted's a gold standard crank, and Ross Perot is somewhere in there. I don't know. It's
exactly the reaction I wanted, Mrshl. Thank you.
what I saw, though, I saw something, and I was like sort of reviewing the critical consensus today, and I saw something that sort of encapsulated it perfectly because you're right, there's a lot of division, and I wouldn't say there's a consensus other than, hey, it was mixed, and I thought the closest to a consensus, I think this is right, hey, this season was really sort of messy, but they stuck the landing, was also, I saw this great two-word quote for what Ted Lasso is: novelistic nonsense. And that is what it is. But whether you view that positive, but the sort of Rorschach test for that is, okay, some people are going to see the novelistic nonsense, and that's exactly what they came here for, and some people are going to say that this is, it lost the plot. And it was less funny the more it went on and tried to sort of be serious and about ideas. And we can get into that, but I disagree. I think there are some interesting ideas at work in Ted Lasso and some themes we're chasing down. I think there is a reason that makes people feel good besides Jane Austen-y nonsense. But even though that's there, so I'm not sure if I answered your question.
But Ryan, what are you saying that you think is wrong that we should talk about?
I had seen a lot of people who had a lot vested in this show is about the end game of Ted and Rebecca as ending up as romantic partners.
Oh, they're shipping. I had seen that, but I hadn't.
Oh my God. And there's people who are like outright like furious weeks later, still like posting multiple times a day that they are betrayed. They feel that the show personally attacked them with the red herring morning after sequence where they thought Ted and Rebecca had hooked up.
One of the really great humorous moments of the show, by the way. I mean, that was like maybe the funniest. That was maybe the funniest part all season.
Yeah, and I mean, even I had the like 30 seconds of, oh my God, they went ahead and did it. Like I wasn't completely taken in until Beard came running through.
Yeah.
But
that is a rude awakening when Beard comes in.
There you go.
I also felt relief because I was
yes.
Like, oh God, the show decided to be dumb in the last episode. Like that was more or less my takeaway.
My relief was like fighting with having to see him in the thong a little bit, but sure.
No, I mean, in that I thought they'd gone ahead and said, actually, it always was about Ted and Rebecca hooking.
Sure.
And it would have been fine in some ways, in other ways, like, I basically find it fascinating that we all watch the same thing. You can't say creators don't have intention. I am a person who somewhat I very much reject the idea that when you release media out there and it is out there for people to consume, any interpretation is valid. That's nonsense. That's completely cuckoo, or we wouldn't have English literature classes in high school that try and teach us how to read, right? Of course, we're always going to bring our own baggage to things, and we're all going to have different perspectives. That is valid. But the intention of a show is not, I think, as up for grabs as we are for the last 10 or 15 years it's been popular to say. I hate to say not everyone gets a participation trophy for watching something, but if you were a person watching Mad Men and you thought it was going to turn into a spy show in season 6, which was a legitimate train of thought on the internet at the time, that suddenly all this stuff with Don Draper's secret background was going to come out into like some sort of like blackmail-y KGB espionage thing. Like you're watching a show incorrectly at that point. You're just missing the point. And there was some of that I felt with, it was the same people who were like, oh, I love the warm, lovey feelings the show gives me and makes me want to give a warm hug. Also, Nate should die a horrible death, and we all get to watch it while he's drawn and quartered because he said a mean thing to Ted.
Oh my God. Yeah, I'm glad I didn't see because it's such the shipping Ted and Rebecca is such a weird misreading of the show. As you said, it's like all there telegraphed some of the things that are going to happen, but at no point can you I feel like at no point was I reading the show as will they or won't they between Ted and Rebecca.
in a woman of a certain age, and they
right. I mean, yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to defend the shippers a little bit. Here's what I'll say. When the show first started, and you're not sure how this typical sitcom is going to go, and we had the red herring where she's communicating with banter with Sam, but she doesn't know who she's talking to yet. And then Ted gets off the phone. And I know, Ryan, you called this right away. You were like, no, they would never do that. But there was a moment where I was like, oh, it's Ted, and that's where this is going. And if it did, there's a long history of television shows that indicates that is a potential that way things can go. I think this particular show was trying to say something about relationships between adults, and Ted and Rebecca are clearly connected. They're clearly incredibly important to each other. They're connected in a lot of like cosmic ways, as cosmic as the show gets, but they are only supposed to be friends.
Right.
So I mean, I can see a reading where somebody really wants them to get together. And I also think just the human masses, I don't know if Brendan Hunt said this somewhere or I heard it or read it somewhere, but he was like, oh, I found out people really don't like it when they decide that your show is going to do something and you don't do it.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
And they felt trolled by that scene, or like they were being made fun of, or like, I mean, and they were trolling them a little bit.
They totally were.
100%. And but they also, those people deserve it. I'm sorry.
100%.
I don't feel like they need to be drawn and quartered.
No, I don't.
I feel like Nate needs to be. But
I will only accept violence.
Yeah, but I mean, to that point, one of the things they did this season that I curled up and died a little bit inside was episode 2 with the psychic, and now
you did not like the psychic framing.
Oh,
I didn't either. I hated this. I was going to say the same thing,
because now you have to fulfill all of those things one way or another, which the show did not really choose to do.
Yes, they did.
Sort of.
I think they did too. Yeah, sort of.
They did it. What did they not do?
Well,
she had the matchbox. She fell in the water, and now she's a mom.
Mm-hmm.
What was the shining? What is it?
When she ran into her ex.
I was going to say, my issue is that the show validated that.
The guy said it.
That was my issue.
His girlfriend said it.
But it was like that was so dumb and lazy, though. That was my problem.
Sometimes the universe is dumb and lazy. It wasn't great framing.
Yes,
I think a big part of that framing, which was awkward for me, was the Japanese bull, which then comes back when they put the Believe poster together, and it's part of this whole overarching theme that like a thing can be broken and then be put back together, and it's stronger than it was before. Great theme. I'm not sure the execution of it, it sort of landed at the very end with the poster, but I'm not sure that particular framing and execution worked.
Yeah, I appreciated they kind of swung for the fences on that. I mean, it was kind of felt very in line with how the whole season kind of worked, of trying these kind of literary ideas but it was somewhat like let's sit down and explain Hey Jude to you, which it's like, either just do it or don't. No one needs a lesson on what Hey Jude's about. Like that, the people will be told by other people if they have questions about why that was thematically important. It felt kind of goofy and on the nose for a show that hadn't really acted that way in the first 2 seasons. And whenever it felt like it needed to make a point this time, I felt like they were like, all right, we're going to pause and make the point. Anyway, I actually agree with y'all that the show more or less, like, I had some major quibbles I was slacking you guys about, like maybe 3 or 4 episodes in. Like, it's a very strange season. They've decided the thing to do is take all the characters that we know and we enjoy their interaction, and they basically have just scattered them to the winds, which narratively and thematically makes sense, but from a what am I actually watching now at this point is something completely different. Watching, Nate be by himself for, I guess, 10 of 12 episodes. I mean, one, it had to have been hard for the actor, but two, it kind of wasn't really what we signed up for. And that's fine, surprised me. But at the same time, it was like Keely's off doing other things. She and Roy have kind of broken up with minimal explanation. And it seems like it's going to be treated really importantly. And that other shoe never drops, even by the time the finale ends. It sets up various points and counterpoints for all of that throughout the season. But it genuinely felt to me like they were planning to spin off Keely into her own show. That was like the only thing I could think through.
I think they still might, but we can get into that. But I think that's on the table.
Oh, I think there's a lot of things on the table for what they'll do next. But given that we were all, this is a self-contained thing at this point, with the promise of you don't want to finish a book and go, I don't know, we kept being told this, this document was super important, and the book ends and no one mentions the document again. Like it's not narratively satisfying, right? And I do understand a lot of the things I think that left people feeling a little, questioned about the how the series wrapped up. If they added more show, I think would be cleared up. Everyone would just be like, oh, okay, well, they were doing this, but we don't know that right now. And there's no guarantee of anything aside from the fact that money talks. So, and all of those people would like to be famous and rich. So I'm sure they would all be willing to sign up for whatever.
Yes, we'll see. I think, yeah. I'm curious what's interesting for me is a lot of, they kind of gave something to every character, and some of it really worked for me and some of it didn't. Like, unfortunately, a lot of the Keely stuff didn't work for me. A lot of none of the Jack stuff worked for me. And I think I said this on the Slack, like we're all watching the show. Like, I love Keely and Rebecca. I like Keely and Roy. I like Keely and Jamie. Like, it's not a problem with the actress. Like, because when she's in scenes with people on the show, Keely and Ted is great. Like, but just, I didn't like any of the Keely Jack stuff.
I didn't either. It
gave us some stuff that worked on paper. I loved that Keely didn't end up with Jamie or with Roy at the end. I felt like that was a journey for Roy, and I feel pretty complete about where that ended. But I on paper liked sort of some of the sex tape stuff. Like, I was like, okay, this is an interesting idea to play with, but like the execution of it. I mean, again, like I thought her scene with Roy with that was really powerful. Her scene with Jamie with that was really powerful. And like her scene with Jack with that should have been. And I don't know. I was like, this isn't working. I wish it was.
Well, Jack had no definable character. Jack was
a billionaire.
Yeah, that
was it.
Yeah, Jack existed, and to make us not wonder why she wasn't pursuing somebody at that time, which that was the only thing I could think.
But I loved, I liked the scene where Rebecca is like, it seems like Jack is love bombing you, like that. I actually loved that scene. So it's like, it wasn't the whole narrative I hated, but then there's things like Mr. Higgins goes to the red light district, which I loved, or Trent Krim being a part of it.
Yeah.
Like, I loved that. I'm trying to think. I actually liked Sam in his restaurant. I felt like those scenes worked a lot more than the PR company. But generally, things tend to work when we're with the team. With a few...
I agree. I completely agree. I think that's a really good call out, Laura. The Sam stuff in his restaurant partially worked because we kept seeing the team go there, and they were there for the cleanup. They're there for the opening. Sorry, I just did that in reverse chronological order, but it helped to contextualize it within the show. And to Mrshl's point, whether the world feels bigger or smaller, or how this fits in, versus the Keely Jones PR company felt like it was just kind of floating in orbit, and they so wanted us to love her CFO character. And I was like, y'all, this is not landing the way, like, and apparently that actress is very famous from some British show that I've never heard of or seen. And yeah, she's playing that. And I'm like, I
enjoyed her. I didn't enjoy the the place where she occupied. I was like, I think she's very clearly talented,
good,
and charismatic, and funny.
I'm with Mrshl,
and, but she was that whole. Like, I kind of get what they're doing, right? This is a show about being a mentor and seeking mentors and those relationships and sort of creating these foils where, Keeley goes off, finds a mentor, and then, same thing with Nate. They both have these different, somewhat negative experiences. What I thought bothered me about I don't know why Jack had to be a lover when, where to me they were trying to, it would have been more successful if they were calling out her failures as a mentor rather than her failures as a partner. Because I think, especially when you look at the point that they were trying to make with, hey, you were involved in this sex tape thing and now my lawyer is coming to apologize. That makes a lot more sense if they aren't personally involved, right? If that's her superior and she's trying to, you know what I'm saying? Like, to me, like, making them lovers on the side of that mentor relationship made it too busy, and it made it too hard to do the thematic work that I felt like they were trying to do, where they're trying to say, hey, these characters we love are seeking out different mentors and finding them. And in some cases, some of the mentors aren't very good. Like, that's a thing that happened in this show. And to me, to a great extent, that's kind of what the show is about. So I saw what they were trying to do. I just thought it was clumsy. And so I agree with you. The Jack stuff could have worked. Like, she is a Rupert kind of, right? But it didn't, it jumbled it up for me. It didn't land the right way.
To heartily agree with you, I never thought of that character as a mentor.
Right.
Really. I thought of her as someone who's trying to get in her pants. And so she's willing to kind of, fund her company and, entertain her various notions until she doesn't. Because, it is interesting to compare her to Rupert because of Rupert, initially always coming off as a good guy and then, lowering the mask or removing the mask or whatever.
Right.
And there was some of that then, I guess, with her, with Jack, she's willing to help with the goat and all that. But she never felt, neither she nor the CFO ever felt like really fleshed out characters to me. They felt like, this is the gag this person's going to, or the CFO has just felt to me like this is the gag she's going to do. We're going to give her something outrageous to say that seems kind of clueless every time she leaves this, before she leaves the scene. And it was fine. I didn't dislike the character, but I also thought they were sure spending a lot of time on her screen time for someone who wasn't delivering a whole lot back to whatever was going on. Although at the end, I did understand, okay, they're now going, this is what she's modeling based on how Keeley has learned to form other relationships, and some of these relationships work, and certainly saw she brought her friend into the company, which felt like a whole detour in itself. And there's a lesson tied to it, but it's like, man, that's a detour.
Right. It's not as fruitful as some of the other things that we get to see in the ensemble workings. Yeah. Certainly. Mrshl, you made a good point on the Slack at some point. I think it was you. I'm attributing it to you. You can clarify about how a lot of the show is seeing yourself through other people's eyes.
I was definitely going to talk about this because I think it is, to me, in addition to the scene where we're talking about with mentors, right? Because I think mentorship and to some extent fatherhood, right? And the ache, I think, that people feel for the mentor they want or the father figure that they want, and with the disappointment when you don't find that person there. So that, I think that's a big theme of the show. But yes, one of the other things that I talked about as being a theme of the show is the journey of finding out how other people look at you and how that is, it's so difficult to accurately recognize yourself as the way other people, as how other people see you, and how that delta affects you. That's what I think that's a big part of the Nate story, and a big part of what I think is so interesting about Nate is that Nate, for a while there in the earlier seasons, he is very concerned about how they're and embarrassed by certain things, but he thinks people are focusing on these things about him that to him feel like embarrassing warts. And people aren't focusing on that at all. And that's what causes him to lash out, is he's not seeing in himself what other people are seeing. And that deficit, that delta, is what's causing his ache, is what's causing his the pain that he causes other people. It's what's making him sort of go off the rails. And I think that's true of a lot of characters in this show, including people like Rupert, where you see a glimmer of a man trying to figure it out, a glimmer of a man who, he's such an interesting character, and in my opinion, we don't really get enough of him. But it's like he's such an interesting villain, and they show a little complexity in him that he doesn't get it. He's not really understanding how other people see him. In this case, in a negative way, he's not grasping the fact that that he's being viewed negatively, and he's not understanding why he's being viewed negatively. And and he picks up the wrong cues from Rebecca. Like, he finally gets what makes Rebecca a great person, a compelling person, and why she's valuable after he's divorced her. And then he tries to kiss her again. And he's missing entirely what their exchange is about in that scene, where she convinces the rest of the league to turn down the money from the Nigerian billionaire, right? And so I just think there's a lot of this show where there's a struggle to understand. We see this. Who's the character, the gay footballer who comes out, and then Holland, yeah.
And then McAdoo is his friend.
Right. And there's this whole, they don't, and I think Keeley and Jack has a little bit of this as well. There's so much concern about how you're going to be seen, but it's that lack of knowledge again. Like, if you knew, you would behave differently. And I think that's what's, but once he realizes that, and I think this is probably what I said in the Slack, which is revealing to people and having the courage to reveal to people the good that you see in them. That's what kindness is. And so revealing people to themselves is what it means to be kind. And that, to me, is what this show is about. It's like bringing Nate back, allowing Keeley to come back, telling Keeley why she's like, Rebecca is saying, look, I value your friendship and I believe in you. That's what mentorship is, but it's also, that's what kindness is. Here's what I see in you. Here's why you're valuable to me. Let me bring you back. And it's people learning that the ways in which other people value them, to me, and then growing and succeeding because they learn that information. I just think that's a big part of the show.
In the gay storyline, it was particularly powerful, I thought, because you think the whole time that McAdoo has a problem, that he's homophobic, or he has a problem with him because he's gay. And then when he finally goes and talks to him, he says, what was it about me that made you feel like you couldn't tell me? And that's, that's just really powerful. And it's also like him seeing himself, him thinking that he couldn't share that information, that it had something to do with the deficit in him. And then Colin, obviously Colin's like, no, I didn't tell. I mean, it was me. I didn't tell anybody.
It's me, right.
Yeah, I thought for what was a abbreviated storyline, it was one of the best of the season by far for a number of reasons. And that line, the first two seasons, it was interesting going back and watching the first episode of this season, because I realized I didn't laugh once through the entire episode. There's it's much more of a drama or melodrama in season 3 than it is, where it's set up joke for the first, especially
right.
in season 2, maybe a little less. But it became much more kind of about these relationships and about different stuff. I will say my own mother last weekend, as we were washing dishes together, said, I like season 3 because they seem to be taking things actually seriously now, which I found fascinating. Anything my mom says about any media is always fascinating, because it's her oblique angle she comes in at is always interesting. But that line from McAdoo choked me up because yeah, I mean, it was felt very real, like, and I don't necessarily think the Colin character owed anybody anything.
Right. I was going to say
Exactly.
that's not. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was like, this is how we end up hurting each other, right? So I thought it was really well done, and it was and being able to fill out Trent a lot more, and bring him in as part of the consult, I guess, to help resolve the storyline. I mean, that actor, I guess his name is James Hance. I mean, talk about a score of a job. I mean, he probably thought he was going to have that interview episode in season 1, and then
like one off, maybe possibly recurring.
Yeah, and everyone.
I feel like they focus tested that guy and realized he was just off the charts, and they wanted to bring him back. I mean, that's.
Well, I mean, with these guys, I almost think they probably just had an instinct, and they were like, bring him in. But maybe not, because obviously some other instincts did not come to fruition.
I read an interview with him where he said, basically, Sudeikis said, keep hanging around. We have plans for this character. Like, I guess the idea of him writing this book. I mean, Sudeikis must have had this whole thing mapped out in his head, well before it ever started shooting, which has always been planned.
Yeah, I know he said, the actor who, his name is not coming to me right now, but who plays the Nate character said, I think in the first episode when they had that gala, maybe he sat him down and was like, this is how, this is going to be the arc of the 3 seasons, and mapped it out for him. So they had at least a 3 season storyline.
Yeah.
And I guess they knew about Trent too, but
yeah. I mean, they could have done it, I guess, with someone else had the guy gotten another gig or wasn't signed up for 3 seasons of the show. But
if I'm writing this thing, I don't want to belabor it, but I jettison the Jack and Keely, our lovers storyline, keep the mentorship there, and then I focus maybe a little bit more on that relationship with God, I'm forgetting his name. Brendan, what's his name?
Coach Beard?
No, not Coach Beard. The
Colin.
Colin, the footballer, comes out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Him and Trent, like that's another opportunity for like real mentorship and kinship, and like a place like when you're new to something and it's scary, and you find someone who can help you, like that made that. I wanted more of that, and less of the Jack storyline.
Yeah. So we haven't really talked about the 2 major characters' storylines. I'll start and not head towards the eponymous main character first, but we'll head for the other main character. To me, Rebecca's storyline was done about 2/3 of the way through the season in some ways, and in other ways, I fight with myself on that. But I will say I heard a lot of people, including yourselves, really like the Amsterdam episode. I felt like it was pointing back a direction that I liked, but I also felt like they had learned maybe the wrong lessons from Beard After Dark or After Hours, and tried to do it with everybody, and it didn't quite work.
I loved it, and I love Beard After Hours for everyone.
I did too. Those are 2 of my favorite episodes because of the way that they are structured. I love it when the show's like, okay, this episode is just going to be this, and we're going to go down a rabbit hole, and we're going to spend some time with this person and give her some room to stretch out and let you see some things you haven't seen from her before.
Well, the Beard After Hours is maybe literally one of my favorite hours of TV.
Sure.
It was such a complete shock when it aired, and answered every question I was ever going to have forever and ever about Beard. Like, I was okay. I get.
But they saved a big surprise for the end. It's not his name; it's the whole meth thing.
Right. Yeah.
The loaf of meth. Anyway, go ahead. Back to Beard After Dark.
So in that episode, then it's
total football.
Rebecca falls off the bridge.
Yes.
meets the guy and has a foot rub, and then after that she is fine with the world. And I just thought narratively, like, this is goofy. Like, I know I'm missing something here, but the footgasm as like her getting her groove back was like, it just, given everything we'd kind of seen up to that point, I'm like, I'm glad she got off, but it also solves nothing other than, hey, you're a wildly attractive woman, and apparently you can get picked up in Amsterdam falling off a bridge. Like it
I think she had a soul connection, and she did something very outside of her wheelhouse. And that was a lot of growth for her. And then after that, you see the episode where she is doing her power poses and she sees herself as a little girl in the mirror. And it also ends up being like her ultimate Flying Dutchman daughter, who she's seeing in the mirror.
Yeah.
Which is maybe too woo-woo for you in the world of the Ted Lasso.
I will say
totally fine complaint.
I loved that part.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then she goes from being like, you know, at the beginning of the season, she's like running into Ted's office and like, okay, I know I can't come in here, but you have to beat Rupert. Like, you have to beat Rupert. Yeah. And then, you know, she walks into the room, she convinces everyone to stay in the league on the power of Rupert's story, and then like realizes she's totally over him. And I mean, there's a lot of growth. And then I think in the final episode, Rebecca has, I mean, there's the whole like, do I sell the entire club? Am I complete with this? Like, is there more story for hearing me out? She's like, if you go, I go. Having to like leave Ted and break up with Ted is like a big thing for her. I think they're not lovers, they're friends, but still, you know, the whole, so it's like, maybe this isn't, I think that's a lot. It's a lot for her to still do. And I actually found her part of the finale very compelling. The Flying Dutchman thing it's fine. Like, I don't know if I love it, but it's fine.
I just it felt very to me like someone coming back from, and this is just my personal hang-ups, but someone coming back from studying abroad and like telling you about how they fell in love with Ronaldo in Rome or whatever, and you're like, yeah, all right. And like, no, you don't understand. I'm a much more mature person now. And you're like, yeah, no, I hear you. Like, no, you don't understand.
She's very high strung, and she fell in the water and had to give up so much control. And then, like, I don't think it's just like, you don't get it. I'm so much more. No, I mean, she's been to Paris. She has a private jet. Like, she's not.
It just there was. I'm glad meeting someone and having that connection to me felt very different from this has resolved the 2.5 seasons of incredibly heavy baggage. And basically she has a nice dinner with a dude, gets off, and then she shows up on the bus and she's like, I'm done worrying about shit. And I'm like, that seemed abrupt to me as a viewer. Like, I was invested in this character's journey. And
she still worries about some shit, though.
I was just gonna say, I don't think that's what I didn't read it that way. I thought this was about her being
confusion. Please,
because like I thought like there is a story about Rebecca. She's middle aged. She's divorced. Mm-hmm. She's seeing her former husband like chase around all of these younger women. Where is the desire for her? I think this is like there's a part of this story about a middle-aged woman who's like, am I still desirable? What do how do other people see me, and how does that affect how I see myself? And this is a light going on. Like, it's not her changing, but this other person is like saying, she's not taking it for granted that she's hot. You do. I know you think she's hot, Ryan. She doesn't have to change your mind, Ryan.
No,
but she definitely does. She's got some insecurity there. She's getting older. She doesn't have kids. Like, she's having all of those thoughts are coming to a head. Like, there is that story, and I feel like it's more even than maybe we think about the way she's resolving. Yes, there's a little bit of cuteness at the end where it's like, oh, we get to meet again, right. Which I agree with Laura. That's fine, but feeling desired, getting a glimpse into how this man sees her and what it was like to have that evening for her, it changes how she views herself. and
Also,
that's pretty powerful for someone in her position. I think I'm not a middle-aged woman, but
Yes, you
as
are.
a
Don't sell
middle-aged
yourself
woman,
short, Mrshl.
there's still time.
That's right.
Okay, quick question. She did not have sex with the Flying Dutchman on the boat.
No.
She did not.
Okay,
Yep.
great. We all agree because there was. I was just making sure we all agreed with that.
We all agree.
Okay, good.
I think it was odd that the show raised it as a question, but I also think that means she was supposed to have orgasmed during the foot rub, and that was her memory of the evening. I agree with everything y'all are saying. I genuinely do about like I don't know if the show set it up enough to where we believe that she lives in a world where no one is interested in a 6-foot blonde with millions of dollars.
Well, she's broken up with Sam. I don't know that she totally finds herself undesirable, but she needs a win. And also, I think she needs something. Right. I also think it's she needs something to shake up. Like she's got sort of a tight rein on everything,
yes,
and she needs a shake up, which she got.
That was the that and the fact, going back to Mrshl's point and about it's how we, people see each other. She never exchanges names. She and the Flying Dutchman have no idea who each other are, and that's supposed to be the beauty of the thing.
And the assumption is they're never going to see each other again.
It's novelistic nonsense.
It's novelistic
nonsense.
And I, frankly, I'm okay with that as kind of a singular thing. I don't know that I necessarily bought what occurred afterward, where she's like, doesn't matter if we ever win. Like, those two things did not feel as entwined to me as narratively as they could have been.
Right. But she clearly cares whether or not they win when she, like, when they're in their final match. Like, she's clearly invested.
Oh, I don't think she's like laying back like, whatevs, I'm rich. Like, I don't think that's where she's at there. But she definitely, but it didn't tie together for me as a viewer invested in that storyline as well as I kind of got what they're trying to do, but I was like, y'all have some puttying to do and some fixing to do on this before I feel like this is quite what you think it is.
I mean, I think that's fair. It didn't bother me as much as it bothered you. I think I saw more of a through line. And if I had a quibble with anything, even though I'm very happy for her, is probably the Deus Ex Machina Flying Dutchman showing up at the airport. Although, like, if Ted hadn't gone to the airport, she wouldn't have gone to the airport. It's all very like,
well, and
connected,
like
but
the magical thing and whether everything got fulfilled. I was like, this guy. I mean, they did say, "Oh, you will be a mother," and so you do have like everything else. Like, I felt was telegraphed in the season. I was like, this guy's going to have a daughter. Like,
well, yeah. She saw her room. As soon as she saw the room, you're like, oh.
Well, as soon as she was on the boat and he was being nice to her,
sure.
He's like, well, you know where all this goes. But then he disappeared, and I was like, oh, okay. I guess he's going to show up in the finale, and voila, last 5 minutes. And that was kind of
I kind of cheered when he showed up. I was fine with it. I didn't mind it.
It's fine. It's just a little pat, but like, it's fine. It's fine.
That's very Lasso, though. I mean, that's it's what I expect.
Yeah.
Do you have more questions for us, sir?
Do I have more questions?
Yes. If not, I just want to talk about all the things we loved in the finale.
Well, we have not yet talked about Ted.
The main characters. Like, we haven't.
I'm sorry, we didn't talk about Ted Lasso.
Because, like, guys, I have to say,
or Nate or Beard.
I'm still worried about Ted. Like, honestly. So here's the thing. Like, I'm not sure Ted's fixed. Ted's still a mess. Are we sure Ted's okay? Like, just because you have these things happen, like, to you in your career that are positive. Like, what is fixed Ted? What is, like, Ted's still a mess, right? Isn't he?
Ted's better, but he's not fixed.
That's right. He's not fixed.
But he's better. He had to leave Kansas to go have a journey and be better. But there's a little...
Part of me thinks he's going to be a problem for his wife.
I don't think you're wrong.
And there may be some parallels to real life that I'm reading into that, but I mean,
that was 100%. My takeaway was, Sudeikis, this is like when you write the short story in creative writing class and you just change names.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It
was like, man, I'm
happy for him to be with his kid. And look, I was happy that the doctor was getting further and further out of the picture, or the therapist, the marriage counselor, whatever, for literally as they're watching the game, further and further out of the picture. Yeah. But, because that guy sucked. But yeah, I'm like, you can't. I mean, and I was also glad it doesn't seem like he got back together with his wife. But yeah, I'm with you. He's a mess. He's a little better.
I also was like, the deal Rebecca put on the table for him was maniacal for him to turn down. Of move Mrshl here, move your kid here, be paid millions of dollars, be a Premier League coach who's one of the top paid in the is like.
But he's got to go home.
Well, why?
That's the hero's journey.
Well, yeah. I don't think he could have moved Mrshl. I think that's the thing too. It's like he can't. That's probably not happening. Like I think in real time, he's probably not going to be able to.
And that's also uprooting your kid from their life. Yes. And like if your feeling is like, I need to be,
kid, he'd have been fine.
I mean, yes, but like I'm just saying that's not what he was worried about. Actually, I will say, if I have a quibble too, one of them is, as much as there were red herrings this season, I felt like every time there was like a thing, I was like when Henry's being bullied, I mean, immediately I was like, he's not being bullied, he's the bully. Mm-hmm. Like the second they said it. And I mean, I think if he's worried about his son, so if you're worried about your son and your Ted Lasso, you go to him. You don't uproot him out of his life.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it was one of those points, though.
Not that no kids have never moved ever.
Yeah,
but
it's like I understand like fantasy, but also if you sign up to be a sports coach, if you think you're not going to move as part of that gig, unless you're coaching like middle school, that is what happens, right? I mean, that's the deal. You're moving every 3 years.
I mean, he might already have enough money to be set for life.
Maybe.
Well, he's a successful Division II, Division I football coach, right? I mean, it's not like can't forget that like football coaches get paid a lot of money, and he was like there at the pinnacle, or at the pinnacle of that level at least. Football, he's not. If he goes back to that, he's not doing poorly for himself.
But also like just being a football coach in the UK, it's like. I mean, she offered MLS things. Sorry, like she offered it to make him the most high paid coach in the league, right? But I don't think he's particularly poorly paid. Maybe I'm wrong.
Well, I mean, he never moved out of his one bedroom apartment. No, but
he likes a dense, walkable city. That's what he likes. I mean,
it's so close to the pub.
To me, that's the fairy. That's the biggest fairy tale of them all. We
need a walkable city. Bring back walkable cities.
That's why I watch Ted Lasso each week. Oh, what would that be like?
Just a reminder, this was part 1. Part 2 will be also posted, so just go take a look for it. That about wraps it up for this edition of The Signal Watch, a production of the League of Melbotus. Thanks for sticking with us. If you enjoyed the podcast, we invite you to drop on by the Signal Watch blog, where you'll find write-ups of a wide variety of movies and more. We'd love to hear from you, so find us online and let us know what you think. Whether you prefer email, blog comments, or social media, we'll be happy to hear from you. We'll be back soon with more exceedingly high quality content. So, until next time, God damn it, babies, you've got to be kind.